This is the future. Evolution.
The Crossing Realms Conference launches September 19th and 20th and will dock in Richmond, Missouri. This is already being called the event of the year, folks. With an unprecedented list of speakers and special guests, 2 days of cryptids, UFOs, and paranormal presentations, along with a celebrity-filled ghost hunt, meet and greet, gallery reading, vendors, and a film screening. This promises to be both educational and fun. Go to eventbrite.com to secure your tickets and vendor slots before they are all abducted. They're going fast.
That's right, everybody. Do not get abducted before that magnificent event taking place in St. Louis. Outside of St. Louis, we have a great show. This is Beyond BMR. Of course, I'm your host, Bigfoot Michiganrob. Thanks to everybody for coming on in. Of course, joining me over in Studio B, the lovely KRISTA from the Blondes and the Booze Paranormal Podcast, of course, found on YouTube. Always a great show. We have a great 2 people joining us from Hellbent Holler. Joe and Jessi will be joining us shortly. Shout out to them. Of course, if it is your first time here, please subscribe to Bigfoot Michiganrob on YouTube, the Blondes and the Booze Paranormal Podcast on YouTube, Texas Front Porch. Of course, Hellbent Holler, if you're unfamiliar with them. I have their links in the show description and posted here in the chat. And I'm sure my mods will do their due diligence and drop their links throughout the show. Thank you for that. Of course, the super chat's open. Always a great way to help support what we all do around here. You can become a BMR pirate. That's right, mateys. Join today. Join the many. Join the few, depending on your point of view, of course. Thank you for that. And really briefly, before we get on with the show, a couple other things. I got to thank everybody out there, like I normally do, for buying my books. Found on Amazon, Bigfoot Michiganrob presents True Cryptid Encounters, Book 1 and 2. All you simply need to do is type Bigfoot Michiganrob in your Amazon browser. Do me a favor for those that have bought it already. Please leave a review. It does help promote sales. It's analytics these days, as you all know, just like YouTube. YouTube, hit the like, leave a comment after the show. Leave a review for the books. I do appreciate that. Thanks in advance. And with that being said, I'm going to bring up the lovely KRISTA. And boy, oh boy, what's up, KRISTA? How you doing? I had to make us a little smaller there to fit everybody in. How you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic.
Yeah.
Doing fantastic. Got up today, shoveled some snow.
No,
and,
you did not.
Yeah, well, no, I didn't. But I did last week. I wanted to catch you to make sure. No, but it was still 42 degrees. Yuck. I can't wait for that to be over. Yeah. We have a great show tonight with Hellbent Holler joining us for the first time.
And go ahead.
I
was just going to say really quick, I see a lot of new faces in chat. They're Hellbenders. I also see paratroopers there. I see pirates there. So
yes, paratroopers, welcome. And of course, if you're not familiar with Josh's channel, that's Paranormal Roundtable, subscribe to him. Hellbent Holler, me and KRISTA. Yeah, so it's gonna be awesome. And a quick, brief bit of business, as you know, and I'll let you read this because you know my eyesight. We got that conference coming up, KRISTA.
We do. And that's September 19th and 20th in Richmond, Missouri. You had said St. Louis. It is not outside of St. Louis.
I said outside of, wherever. Richmond.
Outside of Kansas City. But, however, regardless, it's September 19th and 20th in Richmond, Missouri. And we have a bunch of speakers and a bunch of special guests. And it's going to be just a great weekend. And we have, I'll go run through it real quick. Josh Hurd, Heather Mosier, Will Lunsford, Lady Ann Celine, Ron Murphy, Dr. Dean Bertram, Greg Ogles, Frankie and Dan. They're fellow, they're on my team, or I'm on their team, Haunted Souls. And Sir Brian Bowden, Miguel Ramirez, Martin Groves, and then special guests Ken Gerhard, Dana Stricker, Brent Thomas, Ryan Edwards, Mike Familiant, Chris Garitano, Linda Eastburn, Dave Glidden, Danielle Stedman, Donnie Cho, and Dale Boswell. And it's hosted by all of us misfits. So
yes, it is. All of us misfits will be there. I'll probably be there Wednesday.
I'll be there Tuesday.
Oh, you're a day ahead of me, eh? Well, it's all good. I'll look you up when I get down there. Well, you're gonna have to pick me up from the airport.
We can do that.
We'll do that.
Yep, for
So
sure.
yeah, well, thanks for all that, everybody. Of course, if you're new, please subscribe. As I said, this will be a great show. So we're just gonna get on with it, and I'm gonna bring up Joe and Jessi.
Hey, hey, hey.
Good evening.
Good
Hey,
evening.
man. Glad you guys joined us tonight.
Glad to be here. Glad you guys could host us tonight on a rare appearance outside of our own little Hellbent but we are so glad to be on here and chatting with y'all tonight.
Yep, we definitely appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm most appreciative because I know you guys are busy. Like we were talking a little bit. Everyone's got full-time jobs. Everybody's got tied up with their YouTube, their podcasts, their radio shows, and you guys out in the field all the time. And so, yeah, I really am grateful. And thank you so much that you're joining us. So, there's a lot of things we can go over because, you know, I've been a subscriber for on your channel for quite a while, and I can't get into all the favorites that I have. But, you know, I learned a long time ago to ask the easy question in the beginning because you get a lot of information. And for a lot of people that don't know much about you guys, and there's probably some, we're talking Dogman, werewolf, paranormal, Bigfoot, strange, mysterious locations throughout the United States. How did you guys get involved with this? It's that easy question, but you know what? We all have a backstory.
Is that an easy question?
I had a possible Bigfoot sighting as a kid.
Yeah.
And to this day, I still don't know whether I actually saw something, whether I dreamed it, whether somebody hoaxed me. But regardless of what happened, that's what kind of planted the seed with me. And then I became involved with just basically Bigfoot specific research for the rest of my life at that point. Didn't really get involved too much with like a lot of the group efforts. It was a very solo venture for me. I eventually met Jessi in New Orleans. We were both working in the French Quarter down there. She came from more of a paranormal, like centric background. We ended up leaving New Orleans and moving back to the Southern Appalachians. We were both from where we're both from, and we basically started doing a lot of outdoor activities. We started doing a lot of hiking, doing survival training, just anything outdoor specific, and that kind of morphed into going legend tripping, basically going into areas around the Southern Appalachians that were like basically famous or had notable cases that have happened in the past of just various types of high strangeness. And on our very first venture out, we just had an absolute bizarre time out there. We ran into all sorts of stuff, compasses malfunctioning, GPS malfunctioning, stuff getting thrown at us from the woods. It was just a really bizarre outing and much more than what we expected.
I had sort of an experience where I sort of had like an out of body experience.
Yeah, very
I blacked
weird.
out.
And we finally got back to the vehicle and we basically drove home like 2 hours in silence. And then the next day we're like, do you want to talk about what happened yesterday? And we were kind of at a crossroads at that point. We were never going to set foot in the woods again, or we went the way we went. We got some cameras and we decided we need to try to document this stuff. And that kind of just morphed into where we are today. We're very tech driven. My catchphrase is always that we try to investigate irrational topics as rationally as possible. So we take we're open to some crazy woo stuff. Don't get me wrong. You know what I'm saying? But we try to understand those like topics that kind of fall outside the normal realms of known science as best we can. And we try to be as logical as we can. And
I also want to present all of our findings and our experiences in a way that the audience feels like they're coming along with us. I want everybody that watches my videos to feel like they're there. They're part of the investigation, and that it's entertaining, it's informative, and it opens some new doors to people.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that really we kind of latched on about a year or so into this, is that you see people that are doing like, really good research and like legit research and legit investigations, not so much in the paranormal field, but especially in the Bigfoot field, sometimes it's kind of dry, it's not, it doesn't really grab a lot of attention. The only people that were really able to grab attention were the people that were on network television. They were the ones that had all the funding, all the equipment, but you never know what's real and what's not real. So we decided to just, let's try to do what you see on TV, but let's do it back with like real investigations and real research, but try to have the widespread focus that a lot of those shows have. Try to field a lot of the same equipment.
And just do it with two people.
And just do it with two people, which we swiftly found out how difficult that is. It's a lot easier when you got a camera crew with you.
Yeah.
But I'm the camera crew and the sound guy and, the pack mule and everything like that. But that was our goal, was to just, it's a fun topic. When you get down to it, it's the coolest topic in the world.
It is.
And, it's, so we take the topic very seriously, but we don't take ourselves overly seriously. So we try to have fun with it. We put a lot of time and energy and effort and resources into these investigations, but it's enjoyable.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Or at least I hope it is for people, because we enjoy it. It's like, it's basically our life's calling at this point. And so regardless of what we're looking into, whether it's maybe a more grim topic or, maybe a not so pleasant experience that somebody had with one of these entities, we still try to we try to make it at least, kind of captivating.
Sure.
You can have the best message in the world, and if your delivery is not so good, you're never going to get in front of an audience from it, and people are never going to experience what's out there.
Absolutely. My thing is, I've followed you guys for a long time. I watch all your stuff that you guys put out. And, what you just said, you absolutely achieve that, you feel like you're right there with you guys. And what I also appreciate what you guys do too, not everything's a Bigfoot, not everything's paranormal, you guys break it down, you go over this evidence, you don't just say it right out there. And that's a lot of people just automatically assume it's a Bigfoot or it's a Dogman or, it's a ghost, whatever, they don't look for the rational explanations as you all do.
Well, it's easy to fall into that trap. We're out in the woods specifically looking for weird stuff.
And you start hearing things and you automatically want to say, oh, that's what I'm looking for.
That's a Bigfoot. That's a Dogman or whatever. So a lot of times we end up taking the exact opposite approach. And it's not so that we're overly skeptical, because very overly skeptical people irritate me a lot. You know what I'm saying?
It's like the paranormal wet blanket.
But we do try to run through all the possible variations of what it could be. And a lot of that's for our own protection as well, because we don't want to be the people that, the boy who cried wolf or the girl that cried wolf, and then not have it be anything. And then all of a sudden we get that reputation for just jumping at shadows or whatnot.
Right.
That thermal image that we caught at the LBL that looks like a large upright canine figure staring at us out of a gully. We tried to debunk that 6 ways to Sunday,
Right.
I mean, we were out, we were consulting with predator hunters that use a lot of thermal imaging. We were out doing a lot of test shots ourselves. What does a large coyote look like? What does a dog, all of these things to see if we could come up with it, because it was such a wild claim to make.
And even at the time of we were out there, the next day we were at the exact same spot, the exact same area right there. The next day we put Joe in that gully, and I kind of backed up. I shot him with a camera, and we could see that something was in that gully looking over the edge of that. So you have to kind of go back, look at the area in the daytime, assess how big these things are. What is this here? And then try to debunk it as best you can before you release a stitch of evidence.
Yeah. And what's crazy is that this stuff's out there. You know what I'm saying? Bigfoot's out there, Dogman's out there, paranormal activity is out there, mysterious lights, all of this stuff, all of these phenomena are out there.
Yep.
You don't, and we've had stuff that we haven't released because we're not quite sure about it before. And, I mean, we're not in control of anything out there. The next weird thing we encounter could be the last weird thing that either one of us encounter for the rest of our lives.
We'll just hang it up.
Yeah, we'll take it off, but but we've had a pretty good track record of going into these areas and experiencing stuff like that. So I think the amount of time that we spend in the field allows us to be kind of overly critical sometimes of what we're able to film or capture, whatever data we're able to compile out there. If you're going on a Bigfoot hunt and you're out there a week a year, 1 week out of 52, and you've got a YouTube channel, you're going to find something. You know what I'm saying? You're going to you got to, your channel depends on it. With us, we're out there like every week. So if we go through a dry spell,
We got weeks where nothing
we just
happens.
hammer on through and just wait for the activity to start back up again.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of great points already. And the first thing I have to say is KRISTA and we always think alike. And she already stole my first comments I was going to make to you guys.
Sorry.
That's okay. You know, that's why you're my co-host. I feel like when I'm in my living room watching your investigations, particularly, I feel like I'm there, and it's very engaging. It's informative. And when you come across something that is really a wow factor, you show it. You don't overdo it, but you show it, and then you go back, as you said, Joe, earlier, try to debunk things as much as possible. Now, that person that's just over skeptical. No. You even mentioned the woo. Yeah, the woo is a word that nobody likes to throw around. I'm not in the aper camp. I didn't know what I was when I had my encounter, but now I think there's a cross between something physical and something that's maybe paranormal or supernatural.
Well, I don't think the two are mutually exclusive. We talk about that all the time, that if there's to me, whatever Bigfoot is, it's just not, it's obviously not just an undiscovered ape. We'd have one in the case by now. Mankind's good at one thing, and it's basically killing other species. You know what I'm saying?
We're great at that.
They're stuffed in every trailer park in the South because people hunt and they kill stuff. That's what they do. That's what mankind does. But I always tell people that just maybe if there is something stranger to it, to its nature, that let's just go out there and just cherry pick one off. It's interdimensional. That doesn't preclude it from eating, dropping scat, leaving.
No, absolutely right.
It's a physical creature from somewhere else that's here for a little while, a long while, whatever. But it still can do physical things. So
no, absolutely, I'm in total agreement with you. And like I said earlier, I've watched you guys for a while, about a year now, and I tell you what, the ones that I've watched the most, which I kind of want to talk a little bit about, which is so fascinating, is the werewolf experiments. I think you did part 1, part 2, part 3, and this had everything. The weather, you had that tents, you did your experiments, and you seen claws in the trees and everything. I mean, you guys, this was epic. That was epic series, three episodes, I think it was. It came across everything. And I got to ask, I mean, when you were going through all this, I can certainly tell from your physical expressions on the video what you were, wow, you were like in the wow factor. What was that you guys were most intrigued about? Because there's a lot of things I can ask you about it, but from you guys first-handedly, what did you gather the most from that? There's so much.
The werewolf experiments. So we live about 8 hours away from the Land Between the Lakes. So we get up there when we can, and we hit it really hard. We'll stay there for about 7 to 10 days in a stretch when we go, and we are out there the entire time. We are doing long days out there, just exploring and filming and seeing what we can find. And that's how we find things like those abandoned tents. That was about a 10-day stretch, I believe, for werewolf experiments.
And the LBO it's weird because I was a flesh and blood Bigfoot guy. Because what I saw, or what I dreamed I saw, or what I was hoaxed as a kid, was tree peeking at me, and then just kind of like maintains eye contact, then moves off in the bush. There was nothing that a person couldn't do. And that's why I was always like going, did somebody hoax me? But that's what it seemed like. So for years, I approached this as just that it was another species of animal. And again, I was very insulated from the rest of the Bigfoot community because I very early on saw what the Bigfoot community is. It's a lot of infighting and everything like that. And it was worse back in the day. So I kind of stayed very insulated, and I kept my original kind of like thought as to what it was. And then over the years, I'm going, all right, it's not an undiscovered ape. Maybe it's a relic hominid. Maybe it's something else. It's a higher order of primate that is able to outfox us sometimes there, and has physical gifts that we can't match. And that's how it's able to stay hidden. But I wasn't into anything else. I thought Dogman kind of stupid, to be honest with you. I thought the idea was werewolves. Really? Come on, man. I was familiar with a lot of UFO stuff, just pop culture stuff like Roswell and all that, and there might have been something there, maybe not. I don't know. It didn't really interest me though. I really wasn't interested in the paranormal. I was interested in a flesh and blood Bigfoot, and that was it. So part of Hellbent Holler has been kind of an evolution in the way I think, because you fall into or at least I do. I fall into the category where I can kind of hold on to these preconceived notions and just not trust my lying eyes, or just go, I'm experiencing this stuff. It's real. So but anyway, still the Dogman was a bridge too far for both of us, I think, at that point. And Jessi's more from like a paranormal background, like ghosts, that sort of stuff. And we started getting reports coming into us, and our channel wasn't that big at that point.
No. But we started receiving reports from about central North Carolina. And this is around the time when we were kind of making fun of Dogman.
Oh, we were making fun of Dogman like you wouldn't believe. It was crazy.
We had a running joke about Dogman.
Dogman.
Yeah. And we start getting reports. Another Bigfoot researcher. I'm in a couple of private message groups with like serious like Bigfoot people that aren't really public. And one of them got in touch with me, and he was like, I don't know what to do with this encounter. It happened to my daughter. That's why I'm going to pass it along to you, because obviously I trust the witness. And he gave me a story of they had rented a cabin for Christmas time in Blowing Rock, North Carolina. And the family was staying there, and the daughter was a collegiate runner. And she got up one morning and took a run while the rest of the family was still sleeping. And a large black canine on all fours came out of the brush and started to chase her. And then it lifted up from all four limbs to like two legs and was chasing her bipedally. And that's when she turned around, poured on the speed, ran in there, shut the door, woke the entire family up. And he's like, she saw it clearly. It was canine. I don't know what to do with this. It's obviously not a Bigfoot. I mean, he's a Bigfoot researcher, so that's immediately what he's kind of defaulting to. And it was like the floodgates opened up at that point. We just started
immediately after that, we received a report from a gentleman that we're now pretty close with.
Yeah.
We met him near the site of his experience that he had when he was a young man. And he took us to the site where this upright canid chased their car. It went 70 miles an hour, chased the car. And then we got another report from a lady who was experiencing Dogman activity around her house,
which was wild.
It was urinating around her house, around the entrances to the house.
Killed her dogs.
Around the windows. And then her entire family showed up with guns to try to hunt this thing down. She got in touch with us, and she wanted us to come up there. And we were not going to go up there and kind of.
We went up there and scouted around, but we were like,
standoff.
Yeah, but we were like, they're a little too trigger. Would maybe deservedly so, but I don't want somebody to get shot and then the cops show up and they're like, well, who are you two jokers? And we're like, hey, we're Bigfoot hunters from South Carolina. How's it going? But we started getting all these stories, and we didn't know what to make of it, because these were very credible sounding people, very upset people, but very credible sounding. But at the same token, werewolves, man, I don't know, because at the end of the day, that's what it boils down to. Take the whole transformation thing out of it. You're talking about upright man-wolf hybrids, and that was just a bridge too far for me. But we kept getting these reports, so we start looking into them, and one of the first things that jumps out to you was the LBL story, the 82 massacre that supposedly happened. And I had a passing familiarity with it, but I wasn't overly familiar with it. But we looked into it.
And you can do only so much research online. You can listen to stories. You can look into it. You can look at maps. But you can only dig so far. You can only get so far just by being online and doing that. So we finally just decided that we're going to load up and we're going to go. Because in order for us to get a real view of what happened, we have to get a lay of the land. We have to put our feet on the ground. We have to go and bust through the brush and actually see it for ourselves.
But keep in mind, we're still laughing about it, man. We made jokes about it the entire time, because generally we take off like the hottest month of the year in South Carolina, just because we do a lot of stuff on foot. You know, we're talking like 10, 12 miles over the course of an investigation. And in the hottest part of the summer down here, the equipment's overheating, the thermals are useless. You're spending all your time trying to locate and filter water to stay hydrated. So it's pretty difficult to navigate around. So we decided that we were going to go in the very middle of summer to the LBL, but we treated it kind of just like cryptid sightseeing. It was a big joke to us. We're posting memes about it, and we decided we were going to maybe for a month go check out all these Dogman hotspots. We're called Dogman Summer. That's what we were going to embark upon, our Dogman Summer. And it's funny because we again, I can't stress enough how unserious we were taking the topic.
Yeah.
Because again, that's what I always like caution people that are very immersed in like Dogman, Bigfoot, whatever. If you take a second and you have to kind of step outside yourself and look at it like a total outsider would, because that's what I was at that point. And you see sometimes the more public facing people that are involved with this topic do not do a lot to instill confidence from outsiders that this topic is real. And that's just the long and the short of it. So we were going, and it's funny because even though we were making fun of it, I still used it as an excuse to buy like a new thermal imager. You know what I'm saying? And I ordered it, and it was like a little delayed in shipping.
I lost some of your audio, Joe.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So we
You're getting too jazzed.
but we
I'm
ordered
jazzed right now. Keep going.
we ordered this thermal imager. We weren't even sure if it was going to make it in time, and we were actually making arrangements for somebody to come over and get it off our porch if it got left there, because $5,000 thermal imager, you don't want to just leave it there. So luckily it made its way right to us. We got it like shortly before we left that day. We took off to the LBL. And at the time, there wasn't a lot of public information as far as like where that 82 massacre site happened.
Right.
Everybody kind of had a theory, but nobody really talked about it publicly because obviously they didn't want to get overrun with like onlookers. But one thing that Jessi and I are pretty good at is we're pretty methodical and we're pretty detail oriented when it comes to research. So we basically compiled a list of hints that people had dropped over the years and figured out where it happened at.
Yes.
And we got there and we're immediately struck by, it ain't that remote. I mean, you've been there. It's not that remote.
I've been there. Yep.
And you can drive 30 minutes across the lake, go get a pizza. You know what I'm saying? And compared to where we usually investigated at, which is like hours on old forgotten like forestry roads and then 10 miles on foot, I'm just going, this is just like basically somebody's backyard. There's like nothing here. So we still just approached it very light. We're cracking jokes. We're making predator jokes. You know what I'm saying? Just doing all like from the movie, just doing all this stuff. And we are, and I say that it's regardless of our preconceived notions about that northern end where the massacre site supposedly happened at. It's a weird spot. You know what I'm saying? I don't think that's where the massacre happened if it happened, but it's still a weird spot.
We can get into that later if you want to.
We're hiking through and it's the night before midsummer. So it's right smack dab in the middle of Kentucky summer. It's blazingly hot. We thought it would be cooler than South Carolina. It's not. It's every bit as hot. And the forest is just as alive with insects and whatnot as you would expect it to be. And then the forest just goes quiet.
Yep.
And we're on a foot trail, and it's both of us, and we hear something busting through the brush coming towards us. And our usual MO when that happens is to kind of get back to back and both kind of scan in each direction. So Jessi's scanning with like a night vision camera with an infrared illuminator. And I'm behind her, and I've got my brand new thermal imager that we had just been using to look at deer. There's a power cut line, like right behind there. And we were looking at it, and the ground was so hot because the summer was so hot that the deer weren't that noticeable when they had the ground behind them because they're on a hill. And it wasn't until they crested the hill with like the night sky behind them that they really stood out. So we had been taking photos of deer with this thermal imager. And so Jessi's behind me trying to pay attention to where this thing is making noise. And we never saw it. I don't know what it was. It could have been something strange. It could have been a deer. I don't know. But I am scanning with this thermal imager going from right to left. And I scan and I snap back and I'm looking at something that's like so insanely hot that it's just the setting I had was black hot, meaning the hotter thing is it's black. Everything else was kind of just blending together, but this was like freaking hot, man. Right. So I look at it and I'm looking at it going, what am I looking at here? I think it's alive. I snap a photo.
At that point, you barely know how to use this thing.
Yeah, I
'cause it
barely know how to
arrived
use it. We just got into the
days
darn thing.
before.
Luckily, and I'm so glad to this day that I hit the right button. You know what I'm saying? Because I didn't know what the
Right.
on this thing yet, man. It's a completely different thermal setup from the other thermal imager that we had. So I snap a photo of it and it shifts a little bit. And I'm like, what the heck? And I snap another photo. And then I had a flashlight hanging from a lanyard by my wrist. I try to flip it up and catch it, and I fumble with it a little bit. And then I get it, you know, because it's very dark. We don't have any, like, you know, no visible illumination at all. And I hit it with my flashlight. There's nothing there. I get back on the thermal imager. There's nothing there. And I'm going, what the heck did I just see? What was that? Where did it go to? So Jessi's like, whatever that was making noise, like, moved off. And I'm just like, I'll be honest with you, I'm baffled. I thought the idea of Dogman was the silliest thing on the planet at that point. And I'm like, I think we need to get to some higher ground and get to an area where we've got a little bit more visibility. And we were going to, like, camp out that night. We were doing some dispersed camping. And I was like, well, we always keep a hotel room outside the LBL because we've got a lot of expensive equipment.
We've got to charge everything, clean everything.
Get ticks off of us. So I'm like, I think we got to go back to the hotel tonight, you know. And even then, because I'm going, I don't know what I saw. I couldn't wrap my mind around what I saw. What I saw didn't scream werewolf to me.
Yeah.
Because again, also I'm looking at it on a very little screen. You know, that thing's got about a 2-inch screen on it. So we go back to the hotel. We come in. We're exhausted. We shower.
Do our cursory tick check.
Yeah, cursory tick check. And Jessi goes to sleep, and I'm just laying there, and I can't sleep. So I get up and get a laptop, hook the thermal imager up to it, and pull the image up to it. And I saw this image. And whatever it is, it's got these very large, oversized, pronounced, pointed ears.
Wow.
And what looks like an arm, but I'm only seeing, like, part of it. So I'm looking at it going, what am I looking at here? Jessi wakes up and she's like, what are you looking at here? And I'm like, I don't know, but it was alive, whatever it is. So we wait for dawn. We go back out to the spot we're at. And I realized that there was a gully right there. And whatever was looking at me was leaning out from a gully, and the bottom part of its body was obscured. But it had to be standing upright. And it had to be roughly my height or a little taller. I'm 6'3". And I get down in there, and you can see where it was standing, and you could see where one forepaw, arm, whatever you want to call it, was leaning there. And even then I'm going, this didn't scream like wolf to me with these ears. I mean, it looked like a big bat, you know, it's what it looked like. It looked like a big bat. These are big bat ears. And we get out, we get to some cell signal, and I'm getting in touch with some buddies who are big predator hunters. And I'm going, what is this? And I remember the first one who responded back to me goes, it looks like that cat from the bat, you know, the Everetter batteries that have the black cat with the pointed ears on it.
Yep.
And he's like, it looks big. And I'm like, yeah, it's like my size, man. And they're going, well, it's not a bear. It's not a feral hog. It's not a coyote. It's not a dog. We don't know what it is. And so then I sent them some photos of where it was, and they were going, dude, this is like huge, whatever this was. So whatever I saw, it resembles what people report seeing in the LBL with large, oversized ears. Martin Groves, when he saw it, he goes, my God, the ears are exactly what he saw. Yeah. And I didn't make that connection at first until I talked to people that had sightings, and I looked at some of the more credible witness sketches, you know. And so whatever it was, I don't think it realized I could see it, because the thermal imager doesn't emit anything. It's a passive technology. And I think that when I focused on it, that's when it shifted a little bit. And then when I fumbled with the flashlight, whatever it was, dropped down into that gully, and it either moved off or it was still there, crouched down where I couldn't see it. Realized I could see it at that point.
Yeah.
And so we spent a while trying to debunk that. I got to the point where, and Jessi always laughs at me, I'm thinking, what else is like upright and has pointed ears? Kangaroo. Did a kangaroo escape from like a zoo somewhere? And there's like a kangaroo running around the LBL. I couldn't find anything that matched that up. But finally, I'm just going, whatever we saw, and I can't say what we saw. I saw it. I can't say what I saw. I can't say what I took photos of. But whatever it was upright, at least 6'3", if not taller, appears to have a muzzle, and has very oversized pointed ears.
And the difference between the two thermal images that he captured, there's a difference where you can see that it actually turns his head. There's a bit of an eye in one of the images that he captured. So there is a difference between them. It's not as if he was taking a thermal image of a rotting stump and it was there stationary.
People have tried to explain it away by a rotting stump, but whatever it was hot. I mean, it's running body heat like you would not imagine at this point, man. This thing was so much hotter than the deer that were in that area. And so that kind of brought the topic home to us that there might be, we just had this weird epiphany, both of us did, that this might be real.
Yeah.
And we just became like obsessed with it. So we started diving into the 82 massacre story, the greater LBL Dogman phenomenon.
So we get back home and we immediately start planning our next trip to the LBL. This image was taken on our very first excursion out there. And so we get home and we have to go back. That's our number one goal, is to go back.
That place is addicting for sure.
We want to go back and we want to run some experiments. We want to see if we draw something out. We want to see if maybe we can recreate what happened, recreate the scenario where it happens, dig a lot deeper into the LBL and go a little further. That's when we came up with the experiment to do the scent experiment that we feature in the werewolf experiments, where we actually took a Sasquatch pheromone chip. They're not available anymore. I think the company that was making them got tired of Bigfoot people harassing them, but it is a combination of human and ape estrus, and it theoretically will draw in a Sasquatch. So we use that alongside wolf lore, which we ordered wolf lore, and we'd never ordered lore before. We almost lost our P.O. box because of the smell that occurred when we had it delivered to us. Yeah. But we wanted to put something out there that would draw its attention. So we used a combination of these two scents. And the goal was to get this creature that is out there to possibly take interest in something, to either mate with it, eat it, or fight it.
Yeah,
at that point.
One of the hallmarks of at least part of the lore that surrounds this is that the cologne that the parents were wearing, the smell of it might be what have attracted them in. And the 80s, it was all very musky cologne.
Yep.
So, and that's under a lot of debate, like a lot of the stuff is surrounding the LBL. A lot of it is
there's these weird little details and stories that come out that just come as one-offs from this 82 massacre story. But we took that as inspiration to kind of go in a scent direction with us.
Yeah, because we figured that if it's, regardless of what it is, it's predatory. The behavior I witnessed was predatory. It was trying to observe us unseen from cover. And then when it realized I saw it, it dipped out. And if you want to let your mind just kind of get crazy with us, maybe that was another one that we heard that was creating like a distraction to try to get our attention over there while the other one was behind us. So I don't know. I've never known whether that's what happened or not, or maybe we just happened to hear a deer over there and the deer was moving out of the area because of this thing in the gully. But we figured we would do exactly what Jessi said. We would appeal to like primal instincts with it. It would either want to mate, fight, challenge, or just be curious at that point. One of the other elements of the story was that supposedly a DNA sample had been found from the creature that killed the family, and that it had sat in a lab until they were able to do some DNA testing on it. And then it came back as a mixture of canine, human, and basically greater ape at that point. And whether that was true or not, I don't know. Just like with a lot of the LBL stuff, a lot of it's very circular reporting. Somebody will say something, somebody else will report it. And then now you've got two people saying it. Now it's accepted as fact. So, but we went ahead and decided to do that. We were like, all right, screw it. Let's take great ape scent, human reproductive scent, and then wolf lore, which draws wolves in for trappers. And let's bait it and see if we can draw anything in. Because a lot of the baiting experiments up to that point had been pretty basic. People had used dog food, literally. People had used beef ribs and some other stuff like that. And I'm going, all right, well, let's introduce something novel to the environment that doesn't happen all the time. If nothing else, to try to bank upon its curiosity. And that was a pretty well thought out experiment. But what we weren't prepared for was the unpredicted weather.
And what's strange about that is there was no weather predicted that was going to be snow, rain, sleet,
a tornado.
So we got all of it in the course of us being there.
Every time we deployed one of those chips, we would have unpredicted weather hit us within about 12 hours.
And if you're familiar with David Paulides' Missing 411 series, that is one of the data points when it comes to these missing persons cases, is that there is just this strange inclement weather that comes out of nowhere, and it seems like it just washes away any sort of evidence that may be out there of any trace of these people that have gone missing. So every time we attempted to deploy our SIPDIS experiment, we were hit with torrential rainstorms or ice storms or tornadoes.
And what's weird is that when we were going down into the area around the bunkers, which, you know, associates very heavily with the 82 massacre, that's when the tornado was moving in. And if you watch that video, Jesse's like all psyched, you know, and I'm going, we need to get out of here.
I remember that distinctly.
Caught up in the moment. But what's crazy is,
he's like yelling at me. He's like, we've got to go. And I'm like, no, hang on.
Everybody always pays attention to those thermal images that we caught.
Yes.
Yeah. One of the craziest things we caught was we caught a footprint that looks like a
clawed
bare human footprint down next to that in the mud, and we couldn't follow it because we had to get out of there because that area got hit. I mean, I finally got her back to the car. I took a couple photos of the footprint. We got back to the car. We got across the bridge and into a hotel, and then stayed up all night long watching TV to see where the tornado was going to see which way we needed to flee if it came into that area. But and that was the most extreme version of it. But the other times we put the chips out, you'd all of a sudden get, and I mean, it was so frustrating because we'd look at like every weather forecast we could find, and we'd go, okay, we're cool for the next.
We're going to get it this time.
And then nope, you deploy a chip, and unfortunately lose their effectiveness when they're wet for any period of time. And we would try to shield them as best we could, but it never worked. And to me, that was almost stranger than anything else that we had there.
Another strange element about the werewolf experiments was us finding that initial tent that we found that looked like it was ripped open, and alongside that tent on a tree next to it were claw marks.
And the thing really quick about that, I'm glad you brought that up, is that tent, as you mentioned, appeared to be ripped open. Then I remember you guys are mentioning that with all the weather that went through, that thing wasn't even blown away.
Right.
No, it was recent. It had to be pretty.
Yes.
And it had the front door, something had grabbed the mesh and like ripped it along the stitching.
But in the rear of the tent, at the lower part, by where you would be laying in the tent sleeping, there was a clean cut, as if somebody pulled out a knife and cut it to escape something coming in from the opposite end of the tent.
And that never even dawned on us until somebody later on, when it looks like somebody was laying in a sleeping bag or laying down, something came in the front and they cut and rolled out. And I'm like, that makes perfect sense. You know what I'm saying? And we'd had that video out for like a while when somebody suggested that to us. And I'm going, I'd never thought of it, but that makes perfect sense.
Rolled out or pulled out?
Yeah, so we found that, and
now prior to us going there, a tornado had actually swept through Kentucky, and a lot of people in that area lost their homes. They lost everything, and that sort of drove them into the LBO. So there were people who had lost everything who were staying in the LBL for extended periods of time, and we couldn't figure out if this person was a hunter or if this was somebody that went to the LBL because they had nowhere else to go. And that's why we think that there were no missing persons reports that we could find that maybe match the description of any of this stuff, because a lot of these people were fringe people, as it were. They live on the fringe. You could chalk it up to drug abuse. You could chalk it up to they're homeless, something like that. And they don't have somebody looking for them. So they're pretty much ripe for the picking for these things, that they could take them and nobody would be any of the wiser.
And that was one of the things that some of the locals that we made contact with had warned us about, is that a lot of people that had been displaced from the tornado, you know, a lot of these areas surrounding the LBL, they're pretty economically disadvantaged. So a lot of social services or a lot of like structured assistance programs there that will help people like that. So people lose their homes. They don't have any recourse. They end up getting a cheap tent and going somewhere where they can try to hopefully sleep without being hassled. And we were warned that people were going missing doing this. And some people were telling us it was associated with the Dogman activity in the LBL. Other people were telling us, no, there's a criminal element that's preying upon these people. And, you know, I was leaning more towards the criminal element of it, until we found it ripped with and I'm going, well, criminals don't have talons and they're not raking across. And one of our main areas of research is a bear sanctuary. So we're used to being in areas with very high concentrations of black bears. We know how black bears mark trees. This was not black bear, you know. It's not coyote. It's not any of the indigenous wildlife that's through there. So
they were also not made by an axe or a knife. There was a tearing motion that was there. It's not a clean cut that would be done by a weapon or an implement like that.
It looked exactly like how we're describing it. 5-fingered hand with claws raking on the tree right in front of the tent, almost like it was just like marking its presence, like it was marking its territory.
Wow.
It's letting you know it was there. It was very weird and it seemed very blatant to me. And nobody knew we were there. Nobody really even knew who we were, you know. And we weren't on a hiking trail. We literally just started following the lay of the land and were like a few miles in at that point and just kind of came around and found it. And I can't remember what all you put into the videos, but I mean, she held back and I walked up at first because we at first thought it might be occupied, you know, and just like, hey, we're hiking through. And I wanted to try to make contact and see if they heard anything. But then I realized there's nobody there. And then I'm starting going, all right, well, all their personal effects are torn up. The tent is torn up. There are these claw marks. And then we found other tents that kind of replicated that.
So something that's very bizarre is on a subsequent trip out there.
Really quickly, the claw marks were right within vicinity of the tent and everything else, correct?
Here, the tree was right there, there in front of it. You could touch the tent and touch the tree and not. In a subsequent expedition out to the land between the lakes, probably a year or two later, actually, probably a year later, I'd say, we were out there and we are just trucking through the woods and going around. And I see at a distance something that doesn't quite look right. Joe calls me eagle eye. So, because I can see weird anomalies just at a distance. And I said, there's something over there. So we start hiking just straight through the woods. There's no trail or anything leading to this. And find a very, very similar scene. This is a larger tent this time, but it's the same MO. It's the same thing. Somebody was there with all of their possessions. They had obviously lost everything. They were living there in the LBL in a hidden area in this tent. And it appeared that there wasn't just one occupant, but there were at least 2 occupants of this tent because we found adult clothing and effects, and we also found children's clothing and effects. But this tent was ripped open in the same fashion as the first tent we found when we went for the werewolf experiments. We investigated this. We found no sign of these people. Everything they owned, every last thing they owned, every valuable thing to them was strewn about. And it was not done by people. I can't imagine people finding this site. The site was so well hidden. You could tell that this person took a lot of care to hide where they were staying. And it appears, just like at the other site, that they were taken from the tent.
Yeah, and that was a weird one because you could tell that they had chosen a place to put this tent where it wasn't going to be readily available, like readily visible, rather. And it's like Jessi said, there was clothing in there, adult clothing and children's clothing. And then what really kind of like struck us that this was somebody who had been displaced from the storm was that there were like household items in there. You know, they had like dishes, but they were like regular dishes used in your house. And
it was old Pyrex dishes.
Yeah,
you know?
and it literally looked like somebody who maybe took whatever it was they had left after the storm and unfortunately took their kid into the LBL and were trying to find a place that wouldn't be visible and they could be kind of safe and protected. And it was just, and I'm looking at it and I'm going, well, you know, if they were able to get some help, and that's why they're not here, they would have taken the kids' shoes and their toys and their stuff like that. And I'll be honest with you, I mean, a lot of times you have to realize that these are very sensational stories and everybody likes a good horror story and a spooky story and a scary story. But at the same token, this stuff's real. You know what I'm saying? And we, you know, and it's weird because we were kind of aware of that while we were there, looking around and filming it and talking about it. And we left and we went and we got geared up for night. And we were going to do a night investigation in that area. And so we drive as close as we can and we're getting out of the car and we're getting geared up, you know, getting our night vision and red flashlights and thermal imagers and all the tools of the trade. And it just all of a sudden just kind of like struck us that maybe somebody had like taken their child there because they had nowhere else to go to, and something bad happened.
And these are unseen and unacknowledged
Yeah, it was
tragedies
just-
that occur.
We just had this moment of just going, I don't want to go in there. You know, I don't want to go in there. And
I
don't
broke
wanna-
down crying.
Yeah, it was just very, very emotional.
Yeah.
And we didn't go in. We didn't
Yeah.
go in. We just didn't. And I'm just like, you know what? If it's not of any fear of like personal danger, it's just that it's ghoulish. I don't want to, you know what I'm saying? These are real
No,
people. Maybe
It
something
was
happened to,
overwhelming. Yeah.
and nobody even knows who they are. There's not even a story that goes along with it, like possibly with the 82 massacre. It's just one of these people who might have fallen through the cracks.
And you have to wonder how
And-
many sites are out there in these woods that are
Mhm.
deep in these woods where people don't venture, that are a similar story, that are a similar scene to this.
Yeah.
Because I was going to ask, because I know that the both of you have done a lot of history on this, not just the 82 and everything else. Looking back the 1900s, there's had to have been other accounts, right? It just can't be the 82 alleged massacre.
You get hints and rumors, and the difficult thing about there's a thing in like anthropology and folklore. It's called friend of a friend lore. You know, oh, my buddy knows somebody who told me this. You know what I'm saying? You know, and that's how a lot of those like kind of, you know, campfire story type, you know, scare 'em tales from like when you're a kid. You know, the couple out of Lover's Lane and the hook in the handle of the door. You know, it's always somebody that knows somebody that tells those. And you see that at the LBL quite a bit, and it's always very magnified. So there's rumors of it, but if you start going to primary sources as far as that goes, you know, there's hints and there's rumors. There's not a lot as far as like the Native American legends through there. The Native Americans really didn't go into the land between the lakes. They were even hesitant to hunt into that area. You do get people who had family in that area before they were displaced with the government takeover that reported some strange activity. So there is rumors of strange activity through there from people who live in the area. So that occurs definitely for it. But it's one of these areas where it's difficult sometimes to kind of like parse through and figure out what's a good story that got repeated a lot and what might have like a fragment of truth to it. And again, because let's just be honest, the 82 massacre, it's a crazy story. It's what people who are getting involved with like the paranormal and cryptozoology want to discuss and hear because it's entertaining in a bloodthirsty manner. But you know, that's what people like. People like stories like that.
So you got to try to figure out how to distill that down and get that tiny bit of truth out of it.
So the best we can tell is the LBL is always difficult to discuss because a lot of people have basically built their reputations in the community on the LBL, and it's trying to like parse through that.
There's almost a dogma to it in a way that
very weird kind of.
Once they attach themselves to a theory or they attach themselves
It's like religion.
to what they
very much so,
believe,
very much so.
and even if they're presented with new evidence, it's completely wrong because that flies in the face of what they know and what they believe personally.
And
despite the evidence that's presented to them.
And everybody's got little variations to the original story that they hold very dearly onto. And but what we can tell is that from looking at it the way we look at it is, and we by all means don't have some of the tenure that other people do looking into this activity there, but I think we bring a certain creativity and then a certain like just methodical nature to it. So the best we can tell is that there were people talking in 1982, mostly in the local schools there, that an attack had happened. And it's invariably, and you can hear this from Elijah Henderson with the Cryptid Studies Institute. Our friend Mike Smith, who was in the Small Town Monsters documentary with us. He's a guy that lives in the area, extremely credible guy. Very, very believable. So a lot of people report hearing that something happened, you know, going into like the fall of 82, that there was rumors around that a family had been killed by a werewolf. Now, there's also stories that go around that the family had been killed by somebody dressed as a werewolf, you know, wearing a werewolf costume.
Sure.
But, you know, I always look at that maybe somebody latched onto that because the idea I mean, that's within the realm of possibility for a lot of people.
Right.
Literal werewolves are not. And when I say werewolves too, I want to make a fine point here that I know a lot of people get caught up on the distinction between werewolves, which are transformative. You know, people have transformed into wolves, and Dogman,
shapeshifter or what have you.
yeah. But when you talk to people who are outside of the community and they have had experiences with these things, they call them werewolves because that's what they associated with. They don't know what a Dogman is.
Yeah, that's just the vernacular they use.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit more well known now, but it's always, I saw a werewolf. You're going to think I'm crazy. I saw a werewolf. You're going to think I'm crazy. A werewolf attacked my cattle. You're going to think I'm crazy. My horse is all clawed up, and it's a werewolf. And I'm just, but that's why we called it the werewolf experiments. But so there's people always go, well, there's no evidence that the 82 attack happened. But there is rumors that started up almost immediately that predate, Jan Thompson, who was the person that popularized the story. There are rumors that are verified by credible people.
And it's a lot of people who are completely unconnected that were in the area at the time. They're unconnected and they have similar stories from when they were young.
Yeah.
And they've not come together. They've not planned any of this, but there are certain small details that these witnesses who were around in the area, who remember it being a subject of conversation, there are certain details that occurred in those circles they were running in that are similar.
Yeah. So we go there, and now keep in mind too, I always preface this by saying we found a footprint that was extremely odd and looked like a clawed bear footprint right at the bunkers that they're called, right at the bunkers right there. Those two thermal images I caught are within a stone's throw of where the 82 massacre site supposedly happened at. But our contention is that something happened there in 82, but it didn't happen there. And I always say we can't prove or disprove that a family was attacked. There's no police reports. People have looked. There's nothing in the newspapers. There's allegations of a cover-up. And if there's a cover-up, there's not going to be an official paper trail.
Right.
So you can't prove or disprove that. But there are things that you can prove or disprove. So we start combing through local area libraries, trying to go through stuff. Jessi starts poring over aerial photography of the area.
That was when my first big breakthrough in the case was the aerial photography. So I started studying the aerial photography that went back from 1963 all the way up to 1985. Those were my interest areas. So I looked at the aerial photography of that area that is the area of the alleged 1982 massacre. So the reason I chose 1963 is because that's the time in which it was taken over around the time by the TVA. The TVA had a practice of establishing work camps for workers that were there. These were young men who would build all of these things, and they would build dams, they would build infrastructure, but they were single men that lived at these camps. I have found evidence in this aerial photography that area that is what we refer to as the massacre site, the alleged massacre site, was actually not a campground. It was a TVA work camp.
Yeah.
And what we refer to as the bunkers was rainwater cisterns.
Yeah.
So,
and you can even see there's a semi-intact farm there called Empire Farms that has the exact same thing as the bunkers right behind it. It's a rainwater cistern.
The rainwater cistern was built around the same time. It uses the same materials. It has the same dimensions as the rainwater cisterns that we found in the alleged massacre site. So that leads me to believe this is a banana. This is a banana. You got two bananas.
Yeah. And the other thing too that struck us is that when you go there in the dead of winter and all the plant life is dead, the foliage is dead, and you just walk. We picked where we thought the 82 massacre site might have happened, and we just start walking in ever increasing circles, just spiraling out, looking. And you find the stuff that people report. You find some cut down power poles. You find the remnants of plumbing and everything like that. But the most important thing you find is open garbage heaps from like the 1950s and 60s.
So in these garbage heaps, you kind of dig into them. We found beer cans. And if you are familiar with the crazy, awesome group of people online who collect beer cans, You can take these beer cans and you can ask them, and they'll tell you exactly what year that beer can is from because of how the pony is pulling the wagon. You know, how many ponies pulling the wagon.
Oh, yeah.
How does the mountains look? I'll tell you exactly what year that's from. So we discovered several beer cans from the late 1950s and the early 1960s in this area that was supposedly a very nice RV camp. So if this was a very nice RV camp in 1982, why did they not bother to pick up trash from that?
Right.
And that's the thing. It's you hear the stories. It's all they always hammer on the fact of how nice the campground was, how posh it was. It's 1982. Recreational vehicles and campers and all that are not as prolific as they are right now. You probably had a pretty decent income if you owned one of these things.
Yeah.
So, like, you know, a dentist from like Wisconsin is going to take his family there in his, you know, RV that probably costs what the average American family makes in a year.
Mhm.
And he's going to let his really privileged children just play in the garbage heaps from 1950 and 1960. They would have gotten rid of that.
Right.
So that's when we first went, there's no campground here. You know, that backs up what Jessi found with the aerial photography.
But there were dudes hanging out there in 1963 drinking beer.
Drinking beer. So, you know,
Yeah, right.
so then we start going through and we find some old microfiches that have some local newspapers that were released in the winter of 81 or fall.
Well, it was
fall and winter of 81.
Fall winter 81 that rolled into 82, that rolled into the early spring season of 82.
So right as people were getting ready to start doing outdoor activities. And one of the articles has a list of every single campground that's available in the land between the lakes for people to come and enjoy.
With a map. And guess what's not on it?
There's no
That
campground there where the massacre supposed to be happened. Okay.
The campground that is adjacent to it, that is closest to it, is definitely on there. The campground that is south of it is definitely on there. But that particular campground is not on there.
And it's also
and these are physical microfiche, by the way.
Yeah, and it's also next to a cemetery where there's a Congressional Medal of Honor winner buried. And you're going, if they're going to pick anywhere to put a campground, they're probably not going to have people just get out and wow, there's a cemetery like right here.
Yeah.
I mean, if nothing else, to just try to pay a little bit of respect to, you know, a very prestigious person that's buried there.
Right.
So
Andrew Jackson Smith.
Yeah. And so we start having, we start going, well, you know, something's up. You know, there's credible people who heard stories of this happening. We've experienced stuff up here. You know, we're not saying that the LBL is like a dead zone and nothing's going on, but it's just that the story, the way it's been told, doesn't seem like it holds a lot of water.
Right.
So, you know, fast forward to we meet Martin Groves and we're down in the area where Martin Groves' attack happened. It's us, Martin Groves, Dewey Edwards.
And we're looking at maps.
And we're looking at maps. And we realize
there's a huge peninsula right over here that we've never been to, that we can't seem to access.
Yeah, you can't really find much on it. It's a peninsula that shoots off the main peninsula.
And it's huge.
So we drive there and the road's blocked. So we gear up, we proceed in on foot, and we keep coming across a series of gates that have, like, over the years, they've expanded the shutdown area for this one peninsula. And we get in there, and what do we start finding? We start finding remnants of, like, infrastructure that was there. Signs that are basically on the ground, kind of basically overgrown.
We dug up a sign.
And so we keep going in and we find out that this was a campground that for some reason they've closed down. That's an extremely close proximity to where Martin Groves' attack happened.
And they closed it down in 1982.
We later find out.
Now, the campground had opened just a few years prior. It was considered the jewel of the LBL. It was booked out for months and months ahead of time.
It's gorgeous in there, man. It's beautiful. It's not next to a cemetery. It's absolutely beautiful.
And then when you go down into this campground, they had a basketball court. They had a boat ramp. They had a swimming beach. They had an area where there was a winding creek that had RV pads next to a winding creek, large RV pads. And it was beautiful. It was a luxury campsite for RVs that was shut down in 1982.
So we're there walking around, and that's when the helicopters show up. No lie. All of a sudden, and you know,
They weren't black, were they? Without any numbers, were they?
You couldn't tell, but it's
my initial, like, I don't know why my instinct was get under the tree. And it's in the video we did where we're at that campground. I was just like, get under the tree. I don't know why, but
and I'm like, if they've got thermal, they've already got us, you know?
Yeah.
And there's a military base there, and they do conduct training with helicopters, with rotary wing aircraft there. But one of the themes is that a lot of times you just see helicopters passing overhead. But if you're in some of these areas that are associated with Dogman activity, they hover and they circle. They show up shortly after you get there, and that's exactly what happened to us there. So again, at this point, we didn't know that the campground had closed down at 82. We didn't know anything other than it's really gorgeous here. It's very large.
And we're finding all of these elements that we had heard about at that other location.
So we leave.
There were actually power poles on the ground that had been cut down.
And stuff's been bulldozed. You know, a lot of effort went into kind of erasing this from existence. So.
And if you ask why was all of this done? Why was this demolished? Why did they take such time and effort to demolish this place? They shut it down allegedly for budget cuts, but they took money that they apparently did not have and just completely wrecked this place. While you have things like the Silo Lookout Tower that is down below Empire Farms that is still standing to this day. Last time we were out there, we were underneath the walkway and a bolt flies.
With
a
Eli
giant
Watson
bolt
from Small Town Monsters.
flies down between us and could have killed one of us.
So to Jessi, we later find out that they supposedly said, we can't afford to keep this open. We don't have any money. So they closed down what at that point was going to be the busiest campground for the upcoming camping season.
Right.
And they don't have any money, but they have money to bring in bulldozers and crews of people to wreck the shack where you would go up to buy ice at. And they supposedly did that for safety concerns, but they don't wreck the observation tower, which is like,
I don't understand it to this day. I mean,
so they don't wreck that because they don't have the funds for it.
Yeah.
So the helicopter buzzes us. We're going, all right, this is weird. We leave, we're going to gear up. We're going to come back up, and we come back up later on, and there's 2 cars parked where we were before. Did you put that in the video? I think you did, didn't you?
I did. Because I had to film it with my cell phone.
We had to film that with our cell phone because all of our gear's in the back. There's 2 unmarked police cars there. One's from Kentucky, one's from Tennessee. And you know what? Here's the deal. We didn't see anybody. It could have been 2 friends, cops that were out there hiking for the day. I don't know. It's just weird that we were buzzed by that helicopter and then we show back up and there's officials there, because back in the day, you never really saw an official presence in the LBL. So we start digging, and that's when we find out, when we get back, we find out that it was shut down in 82. So what our current theory is that if that attack happened in a campground, we think it happened down there. Okay. And it's right near where Martin Groves' attack happened. Yeah.
And where that bow hunter was also attacked.
And the area up north, you know, there's a welcome center there, the area that people usually associate with the 82 attack. It's easy to reach. Down here, they've closed it off one bit at a time until, I mean, it's a long hike. I mean, we've gone in there on foot before. We took Alex Petticoff from Small Town Monsters in there on foot before. But we've been down there with other people. It's difficult to take people into. You've got to be able to do some miles because it's a haul to get in there. And it doesn't make sense. None of it makes sense as to why that got closed down. And I always come back to one of 2 things happened in my mind. Is that the story got out that a family got attacked and it started making the rounds, and people were familiar with that spot that's currently associated with it because of the bunker. Right. And that's where somebody went, oh, I bet that's what those bunkers are. That's probably where they had to contain the beast of the LBL. And that's how it got associated with it.
Okay.
So this very elaborate game of telephone then ensued over the years.
Or it's a red herring.
Yeah.
That story was put out on purpose to distract you to the other end of the...
To keep you up there and not down where it actually occurred.
That's easy to reach. You can drop up, park, walk 100 yards in, and you're right there.
However, not to say that nothing is going on the
There's
north
something
end,
going on there.
because that's where we got that thermal image. That's where we saw that footprint. We've had experiences there.
Yeah,
the
me
whole
too.
Place is insane. I think that incident though occurred elsewhere.
I always kind of just tack this on to us telling this is that we're not denying that there's weird activity in the LBL. We're not denying
by any stretch of the imagination. No,
not by all means. We're proponents of it. We're not denying that maybe there was an attack that took place on a family in 82. I just think that the story is weirder and there's something going on here. Why has everybody been directed to the north? When meanwhile down here in the South, they've been slowly closing off more and more territory over the years. And the cover story was that they couldn't afford it. They couldn't afford to keep the campground open. But they were going to open it again. And they keep putting it off and they keep putting it off and they keep putting it off. And then it was, well, it's not safe now. We're going to have to wreck it, And then slowly people just kind of forgot about it. They kept it temporarily closed down long enough that people kind of moved on to other stuff,
Yeah.
And it's very weird. And if you look at it, there's more instances of people encountering Dogman in that part of the peninsula than there is on the north end.
Not in north end.
Yeah. So, and again, we might be wrong at this point, but I can tell you what I'm not wrong about is that there was never a campground in the northern part of it.
I would agree with you on that in that area because there is no trace of any type of campground at all right there. So
and look at the terrain. I am there. There's no way that terrain of that area. You've been there. You've walked the land there. Are you putting an RV in there?
Yeah,
No,
you're not.
There's slopes at angles. You're not getting an RV down in there. Even if at one point the road was graded and it was a lot better maintained, the slopes are too steep. You are never getting an RV.
Drop offs, like you said, too steep
all over.
And that you can't rule out the fact that maybe a family just went camping back in there. Tent. They were camping out of their car. I don't think they would have been able to get an RV back in there, but maybe the roads were substantially better back then. But there wasn't an RV campground there.
Right.
So when you start finding falsehood in one part, you have to kind of question everything.
That opens the door to more questions about what else is incorrect about this.
And I be honest with you, I kind of lean towards the fact that it's a red herring, that story was encouraged to kind of like spread. That story was encouraged and everybody's looking up here. Meanwhile, down here, we're closing off another 50 acres. We're closing off another section of road.
And that also keeps out the looky-loos from going in and getting attacked.
Yeah. And it's, again, you look at it, we experienced some weird stuff up there on the north end, but most of the really credible reports that come out, they're more towards the south. They're more towards the south down there. And that's where this is at. And if you look at it logically and you look at it and you go, all right, I have no attachment to the original story whatsoever. I'm just looking for the truth. Every element about that campground that we found makes sense for an official group of people to come in. They spent a real pretty penny shutting that thing down. They lost a lot of revenue having it shut. They spent a lot of money going in to bulldoze any side of it, And what's weird too is that you find a little corner. It's the basketball courts down there where you can see they tore up part of them. And there's some like staged debris that it looked like it was staged up to get trucked out. And it just looks like they stopped, you know. And maybe somebody was supposed to finish on the last day and they were just lazy and I'm telling them I'm done. They'll never come down here. We've heard weird vocalizations down there before.
Oh yeah.
We've caught strange canine howling down there that doesn't sound like coyotes.
There are packs of coyotes down there because the road is absolutely littered with scat. But the difference between a pack of coyotes and something distinctly different.
What about a couple times that I personally have been down there, I've seen like orbs, different colored orbs out in the woods. Have you guys witnessed all the orbs? We call them like spook lights, ghost lights, stuff like that. Yeah, we've caught them multiple times.
It's bizarre. The LBL is so cross spectrum. I know that it's so famous for this 1982 Dogman attack, and everybody, the first thing they think of is Dogman when they think of the LBL, but it's so cross spectrum. There's everything from strange occult activity going on out there where people are out there performing rituals, all the way up to orbs, hauntings, Bigfoot, Dogman. It's almost like a strange Disney World of the paranormal in a way.
But the thing is though, is that you get down to it, it's easy to visit. You know what I'm saying? There's a road that runs from north to south there.
Yes, right through it, right, KRISTA? North to the south.
Yeah, right now it's called the Trace. And when we were there, when we went to meet Alex Petikov there, I'm even warning him going, listen, this isn't like the places where you usually investigate, where we usually investigate, We're in a 900,000 acre national forest where we're on poorly maintained forest roads for hours, and then we're on foot for other hours to get to where we're going to. I said, we can go get pizza after this is done if you want to, you know. So
Right.
kind of
Actually, we go get Mexican. Right
we
off
can,
the-
which we did. I said, temper your expectations. So, and I'm going to be honest with you. I think that ease of access has kind of aided in the current, you know, accepted variation of the 82 massacre site,
Sure.
because it's easy to walk over to and talk about, you know.
Right. Right.
And I think but again, I think that story was encouraged somewhere along the way. I always go back to, there's something to the Dogman.
Yeah.
There is. And every single one of us that's approached it skeptically, it's happened to us. It's happened to Aaron Deese with Small Town Monsters. All of us come in going, there's nothing going on here. And then you dive into it deeply enough and you do your research, you walk away going, there's something there.
Yeah.
You know,
And we know that in the 50s and the 60s, the government, more specifically the U.S. Air Force, you know, Army and then the Air Force, would basically have members join UFO research groups, private, just UFO research groups. They would join it privately, basically to keep tabs on people, to sow discord, to spread disinformation. And if you don't think the same thing is happening in the, you know, the Bigfoot community, the Dogman community, the modern UFO community, you know, I got a bridge to sell you. Obviously, they did it then, they would do it now. So I always go back to that. I always just go, I think this reeks of a carefully covered, the story got out. People were talking about it. The story got out, and I think a cover story that was easily digestible got put out, and nobody really questioned the details.
Yeah, the whole thing is spin.
Yeah, because it sounds cool. It's a cool story. An RV, they come in, you know, and I don't want to minimize what happened, because there's a real good chance that a family did get attacked and lost their lives. But you're not doing that family any favors, and you're not really respecting their, you know, what happened to them by swallowing what basically amounts to a cover story, a lie.
no, yep.
Right.
I
Absolutely.
agree with that. I got to tell you, you guys do a great job of breaking that down with all the history and the details and all the hard work you've put into it. And it's probably, for me, of all the LBL things I've heard from a variety of different sources, you guys knock it out of the park with it. So I want to give you your props for that, because I really enjoy it. And again, we all hear about it and talk about it. It's almost something that seems to be done over and over and over again. We all get that. But I enjoyed this one, your take on it, your perspective, because I think you're onto something with your research. And I did have to ask you guys something I'm fascinated with. Same topic. What can you share about the high strangeness and creepiness off the Appalachian Trail?
I've never been on the Appalachian Trail.
I have. It's not necessarily the trail itself. It's those areas.
The Appalachia area.
The Appalachian area?
Southern Appalachian's bizarre. It's absolutely bizarre.
Oldest mountain range in the world.
And it is such a wildly varied, I'm going to use the word folklore, but I don't want to say that's fake. There's so much weirdness here that people will constantly go, oh, you need to go investigate the Pacific Northwest or Oklahoma or, you know, one of these other areas. And I'm always just going,
Our hands are full.
Our hands are full here. I mean, literally, I mean, we could, if we won the lottery tomorrow, we could go out on a different investigation every day of the year and never go to the same place twice. The activity that seems to take place through here is darker. It's sometimes more malevolent. There's a core of truth to a lot of these like stories about how spooky Appalachia, especially the southern portion of it that we're from. And it's the Sasquatch activity here is much stranger,
More aggressive,
smaller. You don't have the giant figures that people see in Canada and the Pacific Northwest. They're sometimes smaller than I am. But it's deceptive because you're thinking that, well, it's only in the Pacific Northwest and Canada that you have these wide open spaces. I mean, you have very sparsely populated areas down here when you mix the mountains in. And a lot of these are people that literally got off the boat from Europe, came here, settled in these areas, and they've never left, and these are the sort of people that don't report Bigfoot encounters. They don't report seeing a dogman. They don't report strange lights landing in their field.
Mhm.
And I always point out to people that if you look at any sort of like Bigfoot mapping, thing that's out there, Bigfoot mapping project, anywhere like that, there's a ton of activity in North Carolina. There's a ton of activity in Georgia. Hardly anything reported in South Carolina, which is where we're from.
There's an area in the upstate of South Carolina. It's called the Dark Corner. And that's an area that we had a series that we were doing. And it's called the Dark Corner because it was an area where moonshining was very prevalent. And nobody talked about anything during that era.
Yeah. The activity's taking place. People just don't report it.
Yeah.
They're not jumping from like North Carolina they're not flying from North Carolina to Georgia. They're through South Carolina. The activity's not different. It's the people that are different. They just don't report it. And they don't want, we had a case, how long ago was that? The hunter saw one that went kind of viral. There was a hunter.
That was in I think
this past fall, right?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, that was close to Clinton, South Carolina.
A hunter had a pretty up close Bigfoot sighting, and he reported it
because everybody emailed it to me.
Yeah, the local news got a hold of it, and hunting season got ruined there because of all the the Bigfoot people that showed up.
Look for the next 10 years that you'll never get a Bigfoot report out of that area.
They won't tell you anything at this point now because, again, it was a topic of contention that hunting season basically got ruined after this. And they were closed mouth before about it. They're really closed mouth.
That's why we have a strict policy with any of our witnesses that we do not share locations. We operate in the Southern Appalachian region, and I'm from Western North Carolina. I'm from Haywood County, and if I told the location of some of the places that my family's told me about, I would be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
So that's the thing too, is we protect our locations because we're not interested in other people going out there and ruining hunting season for these witnesses because they're never going to talk about it ever again.
Yeah. And it will even go like a lot of the place names that we use in some of our videos. They're made up. People will go, "Oh, I looked for Laurel Creek on the map," and I'm like, "You won't find it."
Yeah, right.
You could find conceivably where it is. And again, we're going to go in there and we're going to investigate and do some research, but then we're going to leave and go back home.
Yeah.
Some of these people live up there, and
that also puts them in danger too. That puts anybody who goes out there in danger because if they're not familiar with the type of people that live in these areas, some of which I'm related to.
Yeah.
But if you're not familiar with the type of people that live in these areas and you're just a Bigfoot hunter from the city and you're coming out to knock on trees.
Oh, yeah. Bigfoot hunter from the city. That's what they want to hear.
And they go, well, we got a friend of ours who runs a wildly popular Bigfoot podcast got in touch with us to go investigate an area because the original Bigfoot researcher that was talking to this group of witnesses just rubbed them the wrong way.
Yeah.
He was very condescending. They were very like rural. They didn't have running water or anything like that. And basically it ended with them threatening to leave him.
Throw him down a mine shaft.
Nobody ever find him. You know what I'm saying? That's the sort of people you deal with in some of these areas someday. And you just have to go in and just, realize that, a lot of these people have, they might have meager material wealth, but they're still very proud. And you have to treat them with like a lot of respect.
Sure. And just like David Paulides says about some of the Bigfoot world, they're psychos.
Yeah, they're psychos, man. I mean, you have to realize that people like that, if they have a bad experience, they'll never report anything else that comes along to them again. It doesn't matter what happens.
It took like a fifth of whiskey for us to get a Bigfoot story out of my uncle.
Yeah, exactly.
And he just laughed at us the whole time. And then finally he goes, well, that there was this one time. And then, that's just everybody's so tight-lipped around here.
There was this one time. Well, I must tell you, it took me a long time to get mine out because mine was just so crazy and there's a lot of other elements to it. And the only reason I came out with mine is because I literally thought I was going nuts, insane.
Right.
I told you guys I owned the bar and whatnot. I didn't go to work for like 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
It's because of the traumatic experience.
You had a bad encounter.
Mine was terrible. Then my girlfriend died exactly 2 months after, so I blamed it on the creature of the woods. And it was just nuts.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I didn't want to talk to because first of all, my encounter was so crazy that I didn't think anybody would believe me. And there are many people out there, like you guys are saying, that don't want to come forward. Of
Mhm.
course, in your parts is really crazy with the stories you've been telling me. It's just people just don't want to be judged, ridiculed, and Rob's crazy, Chris is crazy, so Joe is crazy. I don't
Notice
care
who's not
today.
crazy in that list.
Yeah,
He's perfectly sane, but
yeah.
and
We're all sane. We've seen what
community
we've
is its
seen.
own worst enemy sometimes with that stuff.
Absolutely.
We had a guy who a friend of ours put us in contact with, and he owned, it was 8 acres before the county seized almost 2 of it to build that road.
Yeah.
And so they were out doing construction and digging and doing all the stuff that always is associated with an increase in, high strangeness, and like paranormal activity. And they were having creatures come up to his house at night, and the guy was terrified. He didn't know what to do.
Sure.
And he saw them. The whole family saw them. And we talked to the whole family, the grandmother, everything like that. It's telling us what they've seen.
They're passing the phone around.
Yeah, we're listening. We're literally sitting there while the extended family passes the phone around, and everybody's telling us what they've seen. But they saw very tall, very skinny creatures that had skull faces and antlers. So this guy he doesn't know, he's not in the cryptid community. He's not anything like that. He looks online. The closest approximation he can find is a Wendigo. So he starts going into like Facebook Bigfoot groups going, I got a Wendigo on my property, and everybody's just ripping him to shreds. They're kicking him out of groups. They're
How
banning
dare
him.
you?
How dare you? There's no Wendigos here. That's, that's cultural appropriation. So we finally got in touch with him, and we're talking to him. We're like, man, it's a crazy story, but everybody seems so sincere. And these are rural people. They're used to the wildlife in the area. And finally, they called us in a panic one night, and they were like, it's masks. These things are wearing masks because they had taken a shot at one of them and missed it, and it took off running, and then it stopped, and it fixed its mask. It was wearing like a deer skull or an elk skull.
Wow.
It's like a ceremonial mask, and we're going, that's crazy. Well, then fast forward like a year or so later, a friend of ours whose father is like a big time hunter. One of his hunting buddies is in a hunting blind, and he kind of fell asleep in the hunting blind, and he comes up later on, and a deer comes running down this game trail, and behind it is a really skinny, basically Bigfoot wearing a deer skull mask. And this story's crazy. Another one pops out of a spider hole, like a hidden covered hole, and he
grabs it.
He doesn't know how long was it there when he set up the tree blind. Did it come in while he was asleep? What, he doesn't know. They kill this deer, and then the other one retrieves a skull mask and puts it on. Is that true? I don't know if it's true or not. I didn't see it.
Yeah.
But these are guys that are not involved in Bigfoot or anything at all.
But it's very similar stories, and this poor dude got just excommunicated before he could really explain anything because of just the community itself.
Yeah.
Not even like the normal person on the street calling him crazy,
These are the people who claim to believe in the stuff.
Yeah,
They're like, you need to believe witnesses, but they use one wrong word and they're just thrown out completely.
Wow. Real quick, I want to say one thing back on the LBL. We had when we stayed at Hillman Ferry several times, campgrounds, and when you rent a cabin there, you have to wait until they go and check it and make sure all their stuff's there. So it was in my name, so I pulled out, and the guy was sitting right outside where you go through the guard check down there. And one of the guards came over to me, and he said, "Are you with the paranormal people?" Is what he called it. And I said, "Well, yeah, and he said, "Did you guys find anything?" And so, I told him, just, a little bit here and there. And he said, I want to tell you that we had a Dogman encounter down here at the campground.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. This is coming from the guard.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
He also told me that he had over 15 reports of Bigfoot down there at Hillman Ferry.
Interesting.
So that told me everything I need to know. Like, they keep track of all that. They know, and he was away from people, he didn't like make a big deal of it. And I was just shocked that he was even talking to me about it.
Yeah. And
the animal control officer that Linda Godfrey was speaking to outside of Elkhorn, this is what spurned all of this, all of Linda Godfrey's research, was that file folder that he had, that he pulled out, that he had marked werewolf.
Yeah.
You know?
And it's a lot of times, those people, those frontline kind of folks, whether it's like a game warden, police officer, or somebody working at a campground or whatnot, they get those stories, but usually it doesn't go anywhere past that. There's no official reporting mechanism for that, and that's not really something that you want to bring up because, that might put your job in jeopardy.
Right.
Cover up aside, Gary's gone crazy. He's talking about werewolves all the time. Well, maybe Gary needs to find another job and we need to find a replacement for him. So it's, but that happens down there. And it's weird too, because one of the other things that always struck me about the LBL is that you always hear people go, oh, the locals won't talk about it. The locals won't talk about it. Part of that is that there's still a lot of animosity and resentment among the community down there because the land was stolen.
Right.
So there's already a chip on their shoulders, rightfully so, because my thing about the LBL, which is always so weird, is that they made the lakes, then they just took all this land and it was supposed to be like a jewel. Kennedy, and it's always the funny part about it always is that President Kennedy goes, well, in a few years, people are only going to be working about 30 hours anyway. So they're going to have a lot of leisure time. So we need to build this recreation area.
Is that why his head just did that?
Yeah, that did not happen, needless to say, because everybody works like 50 or 60 hours nowadays. But so they take this land. They take land that was in people's families for generations. And yeah, there's a few things there. There's a few campgrounds. There's a horse track. There's a horseback camp. There's an off-roading thing. They've got the touristy stuff towards the middle. But for the most part, the land's just been left to, and I'm going to say rot. And people will go, oh, you mean return to nature? And I'm going, the infrastructure is rotting away. This, and in certain areas around the edges, people dump garbage. And I had a moment when we were off trail. We're just going through the woods and we came across, you can tell a homestead used to be there.
Yep.
You can see parts of the foundation and everything. And then we come around back and there's people have been taking 4-wheelers through there and they're dumping garbage off there. There's like a toilet, an old toilet just dumped in the back of what used to be somebody's home. And I just had this moment where I'm going, these people lost everything in their lives that had been there for generations just for somebody to come dump garbage on.
So sad.
And that's one of the things about the LBL that I always find so strange, that they went through all the expense and effort of getting this stuff, and then they didn't really do anything with it. And I made a comment one time, just going, short of dynamiting the bridges to get in here, they're making this place as unattractive to people to come into as possible. Right. Why is that? Why? Exactly. And you could say it's budget cuts, but it's been going on for a while.
What do you guys think about, at one time they had closed one of the parks. I don't remember which one while you guys were there due to hog eradication. What do you guys think about that? Do you think it was really
they closed the Wranglers camp? The Wranglers camp was shut down while we were there. We actually met up with Martin Groves and Dewey Edwards at the way station where you bring your game, and we hung out with them there, and we could hear explosions in the distance. It
was wild. So there's, whenever you go into anywhere in the LBL, there's all these signs up because hunting is allowed in the LBL. It's very very it's scheduled, it's very monitored and everything like that. But there's all these notices going, don't shoot the hogs because it makes the remaining hogs that much harder to deal with. They learn, feral hogs learn very quickly. They're very intelligent animals. So they're saying, don't shoot the hogs. Whatever you do, don't shoot the hogs. It makes the remaining population, very wary of people, and then they spread and we can't do anything to control them. Don't shoot the hogs. So we're down there and they've got huge sections of the LBL shut down for this hog hunt.
Right.
So we're there with like Dewey and Edwards and Martin Groves, and there's helicopters going on. And Jessi streamed it. That part of it's used in the Small Town Monsters documentary. You hear explosions. There's trucks full of guys and again, when I say like military garb and gear, you can buy that off Amazon. You know what I'm saying? That doesn't mean anything in of it itself, but there's guys wearing uniforms with dog teams and long arms that are getting out of trucks. And I'm going, so we go into the welcome center and I'm going like, what's going on here? There's stuff blowing up. There's helicopters. And the lady working the welcome center, she's like, I don't know. They're doing like hog eradication. And I'm going, they're blowing the hogs up? Is that what they're doing? And she goes, I don't know, And I go, okay, so where are they doing this? Where can't we go? And she goes, well, if a road is blocked off, don't go down it.
So there's a trail that goes from the north to the south that goes straight through the LBL. And some of these areas are within the boundaries of that trail. So if you have a hiker who is through hiking from the north to the south, and they have no idea that they're blowing up hogs from helicopters, apparently.
Yeah.
You're just a casualty at that point.
And so there's gunshots galore. You can hear it. And I'm like, well, who's killing the hogs? And she goes, I don't know. They brought in like outside contractors.
Right.
And they're using local officers to man the barricades. And I'm going, well, I've seen some barricaded roads and there's nobody stationed there. Is it safe to go past them? And she's like, I don't know. And I'm going, they're dropping explosives from helicopters. How the hell do you not know where it's safe for us to go into here? And she's like, I don't know. They're not telling us anything. So we're there. We're hearing all of this. It's us, Dewey and Martin. We're live streaming it because we had a little bit of signal there with our cell booster. And they open the areas up and we're going, where are the dead hogs at? We've seen
we didn't see a single trailer full of dead hogs come out.
Some covered pickup trucks came out, but you couldn't fit a lot of hogs in those pickup trucks.
We didn't see piles of dead hogs. We didn't see hog debris and detritus.
It's a mystery. I can't say that has anything to do with Dogman, but it was weird as all get out. And it made no sense, and nobody could explain it to us. And again, to Jesse's point, with the amount of like gunfire and explosives that were going on, where are the dead hogs at? You guys were apparently killing hogs by the 100 in here, and where are they at? I mean, you didn't transport them out. They're not piled up dead.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing too with hogs. So I've been around when like people have butchered hogs. You shoot a hog, they're noisy. You're going to hear it. You know what I'm saying? And you were just hearing the explosions. You weren't hearing like the hogs. You know what I'm saying?
You didn't hear it. And there's hogs in the LBL. Don't get me wrong. There's a ton of hogs.
Oh yeah. But my point being, like, when they are shot, they're very noisy at first. A lot of times it's just not immediate. So number one, you didn't hear them. So that kind of raises like, maybe it wasn't really hogs. And number two, last time I was at the LBL, Martin Groves actually stayed there at Wranglers, and he had activity going on in the evening there. I think he was there with Daryl and I don't remember who else, but they had activity going on right there in their cabin there at Wranglers. So it's a pretty crazy area, I believe.
Yeah, and it just doesn't make sense, because if a single hunter shooting at feral hogs is just going to wreck the ecosystem, because now the hogs will, what if that's going to wreck it? What is like thousands of gunshots and explosives tossed from helicopters going to do?
Also, we were there for several days after that incident occurred. There were no vultures. There were no birds gathering. They would be eating the carcasses, would they not?
So maybe you just had a bunch of dudes who were really bad shots, and the explosives didn't connect with anything, and all the hogs got away, and what we saw were just them leaving in defeat. I don't know, but the fact that
outsmarted by the hogs again.
The fact that they said that in the past they had used local officials, local game wardens, stuff like that. But this time it was contractors, and nobody was quite sure who they were. Now, again, I preface this. We're talking to the lady at the Welcome Center.
Right.
I'm sure she's not tied into every decision that's made in the LBL.
Right.
But the fact that they were confused about what it seems like.
Where do I go to not get blown up from a helicopter?
So I'm in charge of the LBL, and we're not shutting down. There's going to be civilian foot traffic and vehicles and hikers and people on horseback. And I know that I'm going to have helicopters dropping explosives. And it sounded like the first 10 minutes of Saving Private Ryan at some points, man. It's the amount of gunshots that were going on. It seems like you would go, well, let's make sure that nobody wanders in there. To me, and it's again, I'm going to put on my conspiracy hat for a second. This is right after the supposed attack happened in Bumpus Mills that a lot of people are familiar with.
Yeah, that was directly after.
And to me, I'm standing there and I'm going, I swear to God, this seems to me like a very hastily organized effort to get something under control that was getting ready to get out of control. And it wasn't that well planned, and it was rushed, and they're in here doing the best they can because there was an air of desperation to all of it.
And we're discussing this, and we're just going, this is crazy.
It's crazy.
Person talk.
But it happened. And again, I can't say that they were blowing up Dogman from the helicopters, but something was out of the ordinary was going on. And again, to me, it seemed we were coming back from where Martin Grove's attack happened. We were taking back roads, and that area is not very well traveled a lot of times.
Right.
A lot of people don't go down in there. And I don't even know if we quite knew where we were at. You know what I'm saying? Because we were just trying to dodge all these roadblocks and everything. We came around the corner and we saw one of these trucks, and it's 4 dudes with 2 dogs. They've got dog boxes in the back, and they're all wearing matching clothing. They've got some sort of long arm with them, like some sort of rifle. And they're like all gearing up, and Jessi like comes to a stop. We kind of see him in the distance, and we're like, we need to get the hell out of here. You know? And so to this day, maybe it was just a normal hog hunt that was just managed very, very poorly. But the timing was odd, and everything about it was odd. And nobody that was there for that really walked away going, oh yeah, it's just a normal hog hunt. So,
you know, this show's been fantastic, and I'd like to do, before we take off, if you guys don't mind, a couple questions. Chris has marked in chat for a little of the audience participation. I like to do that towards the end, and if you guys don't mind, it's been a fantastic show. There's so much
travel too long.
we could do. Hey, I could do a 10-hour show. I mean, I really could, but you guys.
I can't. I'm hungry. I'm about
it's not every time that I get to have this this awesome group of Joe and Jessi joining us. Hellbent Holler. I appreciate you guys for taking your time out. I really do. Fantastic show.
Yes.
Fantastic show.
Absolutely. We'll just do a couple of them.
We'll do a few of them for you guys, and
So, real quick, this is totally not cryptid related, but we answer all questions. Mike asked, question for Jessi off topic. Who is your tattoo artist, and what was the worst one you have? Mine was the stomach.
I got all of my tattoos in New Orleans many years ago. I've not been tattooed in a very long time, but probably my worst one right under my butt cheek. I have a giant tattoo that goes from under my armpit down to my knee. But there's a giant wing that goes across my butt, and then like right under the butt cheek was the worst pain of my life. And then healing that was a nightmare. So that's why I don't get tattooed anymore.
There you go. There you go. Okay. Next question. David says, are the Dogmen driving out the Sasquatch from the LBO?
I would see no evidence of that at all. And you always hear that trope that one's, it's usually Dogman in the north, Sasquatch in the south. But Martin Groves' attack happened in the south. There's a lot of Dogman reports from the south. And then we, in the cemetery next to the supposed massacre site, we found a track line in the snow up there. It was either Sasquatch tracks, or it was somebody with much longer legs than mine and fake Sasquatch feet on doing these tracks. So I think the activity is pretty well. And you always hear that there's like a war going on.
I think that's kind of a trope, like a sexy trope that's been thrown out there, and people just latched on to it. There's been no evidence for that.
Yeah, so I don't see any evidence of it at all, because I think that you would see an increase of activity probably on the south end of the peninsula where it joins in with land as they were being driven out. And the activity's been going on for decades there. They've had ample time to drive them out if that was the case. So I just don't think that's happening.
Yeah. Okay, next question, real quick. Ninja asked, does Joe and Jessi think the Bigfoot and Dogmen get along with each other, or do you think they are enemies?
We do not have evidence to support or go against either of these theories.
Martin Groves' attack, you always go back to that because it figures very prominently in the lore of the LBL. He thought that they were maybe somehow working together, or at least kind of coexisting in the same immediate vicinity peacefully at that point.
Yeah.
And I think too that if you've got 2 apex predators like that in the same area, and if there was like hostility going on, we'd have some bodies at that point. You know what I'm saying?
Maybe that's what we need. It's like a Bigfoot Dogman war. That's how we'll get our body on the slab.
Get the evidence we need to prove it. But yeah, I think that you would have people coming across.
We're gonna get more of those chips.
The scene of the conflict, or casualties from that conflict. So I can't say that it doesn't happen, but I think a lot of times we always call it like the Disneyfication. Disney, like Walt Disney, the Disneyfication of the topic. People like to put like elements, and that might be going on. I don't know. It's just that we haven't seen any evidence of it, and you hear occasional one-off stories, but there's no data set. There's no pattern that you can really recognize.
Yep.
So.
Yep. Oh, BMR hits buttons there. Yeah, gotcha. So what do you guys have coming up?
Oh, we have a lot of stuff coming up. So let's go with the short term right now. What we got right now, we actually have a new video coming out this week on Thursday. It is the first in a new series that we are launching on a new research area that we have called Blackthorn Lake. It is the first video in that series. We're really excited to dive into that series. And it's a pretty strange area with a really bizarre history, and we kind of uncover some things as we go along with that. As far as events go, we are speaking at the Smoky Mountain Bigfoot Conference.
We're on the stage with Jeff Meldrum. I'm sure he's just going to be tickled to death.
I'm sure Jeff Meldrum is so excited. But that's July 26th. We're going to be discussing the Southern Appalachian Bigfoot. But we're really excited to speak at this conference. That's last year we did Cryptid Con, and I think that was a dream come true for us to kind of be invited to speak there. And now to speak at the Smoky Mountain Bigfoot Conference, it's going to be great. It's going to be an honor.
Yeah, because within our area, the Southern Appalachians, that's the big festival.
Yeah.
Or the big conference, rather. That's the big one.
We're going to have our whole crew with us at that, so that's going to be a lot of fun. We love doing these conferences. We don't do a lot of these conferences just because it's a time issue. Yeah. So you only can see us at maybe 2 conferences this year. That'd be Smoky Mountain Bigfoot.
No, you guys have an open invitation for our conference.
I mean, that's still not off the table.
That's still not off the table.
How this next conference goes.
If I can catch up on some stuff right now, and we're working on a documentary right now too. That's very time consuming, but we're very excited about that coming out soon too. I also got the Tennessee Wildman Conference. That's in McMinnville, Tennessee. When is that? That is August 16th. So we'll be speaking at that. And that's going to be a lot of fun. We spoke at the first one that they did. So this will be our 3rd year at the Tennessee Wildman. That's put on by 40 in Tennessee. Those are really cool guys, really nice guys. But we're really excited about heading out there and doing that conference again. I know that Martin Groves is also going to be there.
MK Davis will be there. A few other people. So
it's going to be fun to kind of hang out, pal around with everybody. Yeah.
For sure.
Great group of people. And I got to say that for the first time in quite a while, Krista, and it's because of our guests, I really haven't spoken that much today. And I feel like, what the hell?
Oh, Joe and I will talk all day long. Don't worry.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's the easiest.
It's not a bad thing, Rob.
No, it's not a bad thing. I was kicking back, thoroughly enjoyed it, made my job easy. Yeah. I got to thank Julie Bug for becoming a BMR pirate tonight.
Julie Bug's our girl.
Julie Bug's one of the Hellbenders. She's
awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. And if you are new here, please subscribe to Bigfoot Mr. Rob on YouTube. And, of course, the Blondes and the Booze Paranormal Podcast on YouTube. Thank you to Keith for the super chat. Kevin Hammerschmidt for the super chat. Keith again for the super sticker. Kelly Sandifer for the super chat. Cryptid Castleberry Paranormal. Thank you for that. Chris, buddy, thank you for the super sticker. Maggie from Australia, thank you for your super sticker. And 2 Shadows. Appreciate all the love, the support you throw our way. It does help us out. Hey, man, I just pay my cable bills with what you give me, so thank you so much. You have to have all the upgraded equipment, you guys.
He's got to have all of his Keeping Up with the Kardashians. He's got to watch.
Yes, all my apps. Yeah, you know.
Thank you. One more here. Just came through.
Mr. Leonard, W. Leonard Athas. Well, thank you so much, my friend.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Thanks very much, and hit that like button on your way. And of course, my mods have been doing a great job of for those of you that Tear Dog.
Tear Dog's our boy too.
Tear Dogs.
Thanks, Tear Dog. Appreciate that. And most of you, for those of you that are not subscribed to Joe and Jessi, Hellbent Holler, the link has been posted throughout the show by my mods. It's also in the profile page of my channel, and of course in this description.
And I just dropped it as of you.
What's that?
I just now dropped it again under you.
Thank you so much.
Also, if you're looking for some really awesome Hellbent Holler swag, we've
They
got
got the
hoodies,
swag.
t-shirts, hats, all
Oh,
that good stuff. It's hellbentholler.shop.
that's great. I'm getting a
Well,
new.
there. All right. So
Hey, Jessi, thanks for that, because I'm getting some new headgear swag with my actual finally logo coming out.
Oh, nice.
It's such a pain in the rear end, though, trying to get somebody not to sell me 1,000 of them. Look, I
Yeah.
don't, sell me 100. I don't want to sell
just
for
need a few.
$20 a piece. I don't want to
Right.
sell for $20 a piece, like 10 a piece. I go on Amazon and get 20 for $20, cheap ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess.
But that's, you guys know how that goes with swag.
Hey, there's a lot of logistics involved, and it's not only going out there and doing investigations, cryptid investigations. You got to know how to run cameras. I had to learn how to edit video. I had to learn how to be a merchandiser, and I have to do logistics. It's a lot of hats we got to wear, but it's fun.
I still stink at editing, and I don't do anything like you guys do.
Yeah.
You guys do a great job.
I've had to teach myself. I had no idea how to edit 5 years ago. I do all the editing for the channel, and it's been a learning experience.
It's all self-taught to do it the proper way. It really is. You can't have anyone teach you. It's all hands-on. I prefer to be hands-on. I think most people that do it right, do it yourself, right? So that's the way I roll.
Yep.
But it's been a great show. I really appreciate you guys for coming on. It's been a great show.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah,
Thank you both.
Very much a pleasure. Thanks to all the new people, the new subscribers, and what have you. And today is blah 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 Tuesday. So, Krista, really quickly, you got anything Wednesday or Thursday going on?
Wednesday's Brandy's show, but Thursday we have actually Heather Mosier and Lady Ann Celine. We're going to just do kind of like a woman's whatever round table, round panel. The four.
That'd be cool.
That'd be fun.
That'd be fun. Thanks to everybody for coming in. For Joe and Jessi, for Krista, I am BMR. Until next time, we are out.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Bye.
This is the future. Evolution.
The Crossing Realms Conference launches September 19th and 20th and will dock in Richmond, Missouri. This is already being called the event of the year, folks, with an unprecedented list of speakers and special guests, 2 days of cryptids, UFOs, and paranormal presentations, along with a celebrity-filled ghost hunt, meet and greet, gallery reading, vendors, and a film screening. This promises to be both educational and fun. Go to eventbrite.com to secure your tickets and vendor slots before they are all abducted. They're going fast.